Today we're going to talk about the first section of the Salesforce certification exam, configuration and setup. I'm going to go through all of the bullet points found in the actual exam guide itself, and we're going to learn how we can focus and really ace 20% of this exam. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the first bullet found in the exam guide is to describe the information found in the company settings. So we want to talk about, as an admin, where you can go to understand this information, what it means, and really the important points of understanding Salesforce Edition, licensing, currencies, and different time zone implications. So what I'd like to do is I'm actually going to be chatting through all of these bullet points, as well as going through a dev org and showing you exactly where to find this information. So in this case, we're going to go to the company information and the company settings of the setup section of a dev org. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it here and show you what I'm talking about. So here I am in a dev org. For all of this information, I'm going to be going to the setup here and going into the company settings and company information. Now, personally, as a consultant, when I go into a lot of orgs, this is the first place I go just to see, what's going on with this org, what edition are they on for any limitations, as well as understanding license count and the different locale settings. And so here in the quick find box for this section of the exam, I'm going to always reiterate that before you take your actual admin exam, you need to understand, at least at a surface level, everything going on in this setup side. In this case, we're actually going to be going into the settings for the company settings, and that's going to be down here. And so we want to talk about the company settings and the information found in the company information as well. And so I'd actually like to start here in company information. This is kind of a snapshot of high level what's going on with this company. And so I want to talk through a lot of the information that's found here. So for the organization detail, I want to highlight a few important things here. Very simple. We have the organization name, we have the primary contact, very simple, just contact information. And this is where it gets really fun. Here we have where the fiscal year starts, right? We're able to start the fiscal year in any month of the year at the beginning or end of the month, or it could be set to a custom fiscal year. And so we'll talk about that in just a moment. But going down here, activating multiple currencies. This is extremely important. You see here that the currency locale is USD. Activating multiple currencies, what's important to note is that once you activate multiple currencies, you are not able to deactivate that. And so we'll talk about that in just a moment about multiple currencies. But this is where you could see that information. And as well as some of the other important information here is understanding the default time zone. This is what the system is going to look at for time zones. So if you see on a record, for example, when this record was created or edited, this is where it's really going to be to this time zone. So for example, I live in Central Time Zone. It's currently 9:23 p.m. But because this is sent to Pacific Daylight, which is 2 hours behind, for example, if I were to make an edit here, just to give you an example, this shows that it was last modified at 7:23, which in fact my time, it's actually 9:23. So just an example of default time zone. So understanding, what's going on as you audit this, it's important to note default time zone. It's going to tell you what the system sees as the time of edit, time of creation, and have those audits. A few other important pieces here, as I mentioned, the currency locale, as well as the data used and the file space used. This is very important when you're hitting up those limits. Maybe you're clearing out information and your company wants to know, hey, how much do we have left? And how can we free up some of this, or how can we purchase additional data space? So this is where you're going to find that in the company information here. You also have API requests, very important, especially with integrations. You want to be making sure that you're staying under that. So whether you're working with enablement tools like Sales Laughter Outreach, any type of API requests, you want to make sure you're controlling that, because that could time out a lot of what's going on with Salesforce. A few other important pieces here is your Salesforce ID. This is where you can find your organization ID. Oftentimes you will need this whether you're talking with Salesforce reps or you're looking at setting up integrations. They're always going to want to know, hey, what's the org ID? And so very easy to find it right here under company information. You can also see the addition here. This is something big in the consulting world. I want to know whether they're unlimited or enterprise right off the bat, because that'll tell me what types of limitations I have. Obviously in this case, this is just a developer org, but this is where you would see what edition it is. As well as you'll be able to see the instance. This sometimes is helpful, understanding different releases, refreshes. They do that a lot by the instance there, and so something to be aware of. But at a high level, that's important stuff in the organization detail. Now what I want to move down to is the user licenses. This is extremely important. Oftentimes you may be asked, hey, can you add a few users here? And you realize, hey, we're actually out of licenses, or how many do we have left? This is where you're going to look at the user licenses under the company information tab. And so the big one here is obviously the Salesforce the Salesforce license. This is your standard license here. You'll also have several others for other tools. You know, you may have Einstein licenses, inbox licenses, things that are going to be needed an actual license to be able to open up permissions and open up capabilities within Salesforce. And so user licenses is seen here under the company information tab. A few other pieces here is some permission sets require licenses as well. And so you'll be able to see here as well how many you have, how many are remaining. Feature licenses also seen here, and different usage-based entitlements. And so all of this is what's on the actual company information. I'll just highlight user licenses, very important to know how many you have remaining, where to find that, as well as all of the organization detail. Make sure you understand where you can find that on the test. It'll often ask, you know, where is this found? Where is this setting found? Where is this information found? Know what's on this page, organization detail. Now diving in a little bit more on the company settings. Want to click through here, see on this left-hand side, this is all very important information for company settings. So business hours, you know, you're able to set, you know, what are the business hours for your Salesforce instance. And so you're able to add new business hours and be able to assign those out. So this is done under company settings. Also a few pieces, data protection and privacy, making sure that, you know, you have this data protection in place for the org. Fiscal year, this was also shown on the company information. This is very important because on the test, it may ask you, where do you actually update this information? Because if I go to edit here, you'll notice that really not able to update the fiscal. You know, you saw it on the last, but I'm not able to edit it here under the company information. I actually have to edit this information under the fiscal year tab here. And so this is where I can actually, you know, I can have it start any month of the year. If we're looking at a standard fiscal year, could be at the start or end of the month. Notice here that this is going off of the Gregorian calendar. This may be on the test here. Make sure that you understand standard fiscal year is only going off of Gregorian calendar, first day, last day of any month. You can also set up a custom and be able to set up, you know, when does your fiscal year start? And so that's here under fiscal holidays. You're able to add holidays into Salesforce. I believe it has API to where you can kind of import a lot of these in, but you know, you could just simply add, you know, a name of a holiday coming up. We'll say in this case, you know, Christmas break or something, and you're able to add in the dates, you know, how long it goes for, you know, if it's recurring each year, etc. You can always set this up, and so you're able to do holidays. Language settings, these are all the languages that are available, and so important to note that this is where you're able to do that. You can enable quite a few other ones, but really this is really what you need to know. hey, where's this language setting? And individual users can also update their own language settings to see Salesforce. And then my domain, this is Salesforce wants to make sure that you have this set up. Obviously, this is a dev org, but oftentimes your domain, when you first start Salesforce, it will reference your instance, which is in my case NA and a numerical value there. But this is where you can actually, check availability for your company name and have that now appear under the URL, which is important for a lot of tools, a lot of integrations. Make sure you have your domain settings. And so this is at a high level, kind of what we were talking about regarding the describe and explain the information found in the company settings. Make sure you understand a lot of this information and different implications that it has, and you'll do great in this section. Second here is distinguish and understand the administration of declarative configuration of the user interface. And so I want to talk a lot about the user interface settings, as well as talk about the 4 apps that you're going to see on the test. And I'm going to cover those right now, right? We have the app menu, the app launcher, the app manager, and the Lightning app builder. So I want to talk about each of these 4 different apps and what they look like within Salesforce and what they do. You will be asked kind of, where this is done, and you'll get multiple choice questions. You may see a lot of these within the question. And so we really want to talk about that. So again, we're going to go back to the dev org, and here I am just I'll go to the home page here, but let's talk about the 4 apps. The first one I want to talk about, which is very fundamental to Salesforce, is the app launcher. And this is on the front end of Salesforce, and it's actually located in every instance of Salesforce in the top left corner of these 9 dots. This is the app launcher, right? This, as I click into it, I'm able to launch and search for any apps or items or objects here. And so I can hit view all here, and this is the app launcher. This is critical because this is where you're going to find different apps that have been built within your Salesforce instance. Right here, you can see off the top, we have service app, marketing app, community app, sales console, commerce, as well as just all the other items or the objects that you can search for as well. Also, this is where you can also access the app exchange. If you're missing an app, you can hit the visit app exchange, and you can go search for maybe an app that you need within your Salesforce you need to download within. And so that's the app launcher. And so the app launcher provides a visual and organized place where you can search through all of the apps that live within Salesforce. Now I want to talk about the next one, which is the app menu. So this one's pretty simple. This is where you can, as it says here, set the default order of apps for new users and visibility of apps in the app launcher. I'm able to reorder that. Pretty simple. This is just to help really set the order of apps and how they appear within the app launcher. So the app launcher, again, is that visual component of how all apps are organized, how you can access it by clicking here. And the app menu is just how you can reorder that within the app launcher. Okay, so we have app launcher, app menu. Now we're gonna go to the app manager. So I'm gonna go again to the setup, and we're gonna go in the app manager. And here we have, if I click in here, this is where we're actually able to see how all of the apps that are within the app launcher are built and housed here. So the app manager allows admins to configure and customize the apps that live within. You're also able to assign applications, modify these apps, and edit how they appear. And so this will connect into the next one, which is the Lightning App Builder. But just to show how this is done, for example, the Lightning Sales app is what I'm currently using here, right? If I go into the App Manager, I can find this here. This is the Lightning Sales. I'm going to go ahead and hit Edit, and this will actually take me to the app launcher here. And so right now, this is where I'm going to get into the Lightning App Builder. You'll see that as I clicked in from the app manager, I'm now in the Lightning App Builder, which brings us to that fourth app, which is the Lightning App Builder. This is where the building happens of an app. So before we get into this, we have the Lightning App Builder, which builds the apps. Those are found in the App Manager, where I just came from, and those are all organized and visualized in the App Launcher. And as we said, the app menu just helps organize the app launcher, but I want to make sure we understand the relationship between these. And so the Lightning App Builder is phenomenal. This is really where the customization and configuration of Salesforce comes into play. And so what's really important here is what you're able to create within the Lightning App Builder. And so this is where I can customize, how this information appears within Salesforce. So right now, I'm currently editing the Sales Lightning app that I'm currently living in. And so, for example, just to make a quick configuration, you'll see here that this highlight is blue at the moment. And so primary color hex hue is this blue color. Just to show you what I can do here, I'm gonna change this just to make it pretty drastic. I'm gonna change it to that red. Oh, that was black. I'm gonna change it to this red color. And if I hit save here, we're gonna see here as I refresh, we're gonna see that I just configured on the back end the Sales Lightning app. So here you see that it's all red here. See this header's red, this outline of the objects is also red. I did that right here under the Lightning App Builder. So here I am on the Lightning App Builder. I want to show the three different pages that you can create. You can create the app page, the home page, and the record page. The app page is just what you see there. That's going to be the front page of any app. The home page is what you see here under the actual home page itself. You can create this in the Lightning App Builder. And then the record page is you can create a different record page for each object. So for example, this is currently living on a Lightning page here. If I don't like how this is currently organized, or I want different components, that's what the Lightning App Builder is able to do. You're able to create a record page for any object and customize using components what lives on that page. So again, very useful customization configuration on the Lightning App Builder. So here I'm on the user interface part of setup. This is extremely important. There will be questions on the test here. So make sure you familiarize yourself with a lot of these settings and what they do. For example, enable collapsible sections on page layouts. Inline editing is always on the test. Understand what that does and that this is where you can update that setting. The user interface, again, is how your team interacts with Salesforce. All this information is very important. Name settings, talking about suffixes, middle names, person names. This is found in the user interface. Again, this is where you set audit fields, etc. Make sure you understand everything that you see here. There will be multiple questions just on this page alone in the configuration and setup section of your exam. I'm not gonna go too in depth because this is something where I highly recommend you poke through Salesforce. You click on, go reload a page. What does it look like? What does it do differently? And make sure you go through the trail mix because this can get very in depth, but this is where there will be questions on the test. So the next section is given a scenario, demonstrate the proper setup and maintenance of users. So let's say, for example, you have support users and you have sales users. The question is, how do we set these up properly? How do we set up these users that have different functions within your Salesforce to share the same Salesforce? So a few quick call outs that you're gonna want to do. Again, highly recommend you do the Salesforce trail mix. Is as we go in here, as we set up a user, is understand how we can do this on initial user setup. So for example, if I hit new user here, some of the things that you're gonna want to be aware of as we put in name and email is, do we have a role set up for them? Is the proper license available? And what profile do they need? For example, the sales team and the support team likely need different profiles. They need different access to cases, to leads, to opportunities. And so you're gonna wanna make sure that you understand how you set this up on profiles when you're doing user setup, as well as understanding different record types and page layouts, which we'll get to a little bit later and in another video. But how, again, you can properly set up these individuals to be a part of the same Salesforce, but have different roles, different functions. And so there's a lot of practice tests out there. Highly recommend we go through those. When we talk about realistically, let's talk about a marketing team, a sales team, and a support team. How can I set them up to where they live in Salesforce, but because they have different roles, they have different access, they have different abilities within that Salesforce? So you're gonna wanna be looking at profiles, you're looking at roles, and you're looking at object settings, whether it's through permission sets, field level settings according to the profiles, and at the end of the day, making sure that they can function within the same Salesforce and that they don't have too much access and not too little access. So that's a great example, support versus sales versus marketing. Make sure you set up those users. Everything that you're studying for, you need to do at least once in a developer org. So let's take that scenario and run with it there. Now the fourth point is explain the various organization security controls. So we're gonna talk about login policies, we're gonna talk about different setting up audit trails, login hours, session settings. And so to look at all of that, we're gonna jump back into developer org again. And this time we're gonna start with the session settings. So this is important to understand the different controls we have in place. So here under the session settings, this is where a lot of this information is gonna live under session settings as well as within individual profiles as well. But be familiar with everything that you see here. Understanding the timeout value, forced logout after on-session timeout, different locking of IPs, making sure that you understand just different MFAs, how we can identify that you have proper users. All of this is going to be found here under the session settings. And so very important that you understand all of this information and where this is updated, which is here in the session settings. Another call out is a new user email. This link expires in. I've heard this is sometimes on tests to understand, what are the options here and where you do this, which is under session settings. Another one that's very important that you're gonna wanna look up is the audit trail. So this is a great one to set up the audit trail here. This allows you to see what was done on a setups on the setup side of Salesforce across the entire org. And so, for example, today I'm able to see, a user came in and they changed some of the, in this case, visibility on the menu item. This is where this information can be found under the setup audit trail. Very important. This is very important, especially when you have multiple admins in here. You can see who did what to make sure that you cover yourself, you have documentation, etc. Next bullet point here is given a user request scenario, apply the appropriate security controls based on features and capabilities of the Salesforce sharing model. So here you're gonna wanna understand organization-wide default sharing settings, and then how you can open up sharing settings through profiles, through roles, and when looking at reports and dashboards, through subordinates, etc. And so to talk about the organization-wide default settings, we can look at that here in the setup here. We're gonna look at sharing settings. And so here in the setup menu here is you can actually see what is the sharing setting of each object. And really there's gonna be three that you'll see. There's gonna be private, there's going to be public read, and then public read write or public read write transfer, right? And there's another option of those that are controlled by parent. So in the case that you see here, a contact is actually controlled by an account. And so it's gonna be roll up to the account control. But those are the three that you're gonna want to understand. Given a scenario, do you want private settings internally to where no one can see records that are not owned by themselves within their same role hierarchy? Or do you want it to be public read to where you can see all records but you can't edit? Or you may want that public read write to where everyone is able to edit any record. So make sure that you understand, based on a scenario given, what is needed, right? Who is needed to see what. In the examples on the test, they'll often be pretty direct on who needs to edit what. An example is there may be a West sales team member that needs to be able to see the East sales team member's records but not be able to edit them. So in this case, whether it's opportunities, what's going to be our organization-wide default, and how do we open that up for managers, but not allowing reps to see across or edit those records across teams. So important to understand those organization-wide default, and here's where you can actually edit them right here across everyone within the org, right? So right here, I could make certain things private. I can make sure that this is where all objects abide by these rules. So again, this is where the sharing rules are calculated. Important that you're constantly revisiting this as your org evolves, and understand that this is the default, but that different profiles can open this up. So for example, let's say we have cases as private on the organization-wide default. In our early example that we have a sales team and we have a support team, we want the support team to see all cases and be able to edit all cases across the org. But because it's currently set as private, we're gonna need to open that up on the profile level. So as we go to a profile that's owned by a support team, we are able to also edit the object settings here. And so I wanna go ahead and jump into that as well. So we're gonna jump into a profile. And in this case, we're gonna go ahead and we'll pretend that we'll do this custom right here. Perfect. This support profile is for the support team, right? So we saw that cases are private, but we want to have access to all cases for this support team. And so in this case, this is where we can actually edit it, and this is where it's currently, they have access to the case object here under the permissions. So again, given this scenario, how do we set this up? Support has the ability to edit, delete cases on the profile level, and it allows them to access those records and edit and delete and create. But the sales team, because the organization-wide default, and this is not available on the sales profile, they're not able to see or edit or delete any cases. And so this is a great example given the scenario. How do we do this? Another piece here is for manual sharing. You can allow the ability for users to manually share across these rules. In the case that a sales leader needs to get that with the support leader, etc., is manual sharing rules is also available here. The last bullet point to ACE configuration and setup is, given a scenario, determine the appropriate use of custom profiles and custom permission sets. And so we've already talked a little bit about the profiles. And so best practice is profiles should be for a team that needs the same amount of access, same amount of permissions into Salesforce. A profile, if you think, is a profile of a team. Now permission sets is you're able to dive in, and let's say, for example, you have a sales team of 10 individuals. They all need the exact same access, the exact same permissions. But let's say that maybe you have a lead sales team member that needs additional permissions. Let's say that your sales team is not able to transfer records, but you want the sales team leader or the lead of that team to transfer records. You don't want to open that up on the profile level, but you do want to open that up to that individual. So you would do that by doing a permission set. So let's jump in and just show quickly how that would be done. So under the profile, let's jump into that sales profile, for example. So on the sales profile, I really like how you're able to just search here. I'm gonna look at transfer leads, or even transfer record. Transfer record is much more all-encompassing. So you see here that they are not able to transfer or change the owner of most records. And this is that sales profile. But I want one user to be able to transfer records. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually create a permission set, and I'm gonna give just that setting the ability to transfer records to that user. So here I can go transfer record. Don't need to put it on any license. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just put it straight in here. So I'm gonna go under this transfer record. Let's go ahead and find that. I'm gonna go ahead and edit here under the system permissions. And I'm gonna give this permission set the ability to transfer records. So here I am, transfer record, great, that's enabled. I'm gonna hit save, and then I can go ahead and assign this permission to that sales team lead. So they have the exact same permissions as the rest of the sales team, but now with a permission set, I've given just that individual the ability to do transfer records. It's not recommended that you create a whole new profile with this tacked on permission of transfer records, but rather you do it through a permission set. If there's several of those, you can get into permission set groups, etc. But that's a great example of profiles versus permission sets. Permission set is giving a permission to one or two individuals, but not all of the users under that profile. So again, this gives you better control over what users are able to do within the system via profiles and permission sets. But back here on the profile, really want to highlight, it's important to know, what the profile can do. And so this is just foundational for Salesforce information is profiles, permissions. And so recommend that you go through each of these, understand what implications these have, assigned to apps, object settings, app permissions, etc. What are the individuals who have this profile, what are they able to do? This will be on the test, absolutely. And so I want to make sure you understand on a profile level, permission set level, what can also be edited. Not only understand scenarios, but what can be edited. So that wraps up the configuration and setup overview of the Salesforce certification exam. And again, that takes up 20% of the exam. Hope that this is helpful. I know there's so much information out there. Wanted to give you a good understanding and walk through those bullet points that are found in the exam guide. There's a lot more you need to be understanding of. In my mind, it should be a requirement that you go through the different trail mixes on Trailhead, and that you personally click into Salesforce and then do these things for yourselves. I'm a very visual learner. I would be on the test and it would have a question about App Launcher, and in my head, I'd be looking at those 9 little dots in the top left. That's the App Launcher. That's what they're talking about. If I click in there, what can be done? How does it relate to this question? Please go through a developer org and go through all of the steps, all of the trail mixes, and make sure you understand the pieces of Salesforce that you will be tested on in this section. Best of luck, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.